Chapter 15. The press conference had dragged on way too long, and as they left the Victoria Police Centre, Emmett sat slouched in the passenger seat, leaning his head against the window. That TV reporter was giving you a hard time, wasn't he? Bianca teased. I know. Ow. Emmett rubbed his forehead, which he'd just bumped against the glass. He'd gratefully accepted his colleague's offer to drive the short distance back to their headquarters, hoping to use the time to give his eyes some rest. But the combination of her incessant questioning and her apparent desire to drive like she was in a rally made that impossible. He must know something we don't, Emmett scowled, because he seems to think the connection between the women should have been obvious. Don't worry about it. It's very easy to criticise in hindsight. And the plain truth is, no one could have seen this coming, aside from the killer. I just can't stop thinking about those markings on the women's bodies. I'm sure that's a message of some sort. What am I missing? Bianca shrugged. Killers' signatures don't always have a meaning. I'm more fascinated by the fact he bothered to redress them. That's odd. Everything about this is odd, Emmett sighed. And the worst part is, I just can't seem to think clearly. Every time I try to empty my mind and go through this rationally, more useless, disconnected thoughts keep popping up. Do you ever get that? Bianca laughed. Welcome to homicide investigations. As they drove on, Emmett noticed the thoughts return, an incessant looping noise of mess in his head. Rosemary travelled to escape the pain of a childhood trauma. Natalie wanted time to herself. Daniel blamed Rosemary for his family's horrific car accident. Natalie's parents were unimpressed with her choice of life partner. Tom had recently been featured in an article. Natalie's husband had a short temper. Do you want me to sit in on your interview with Brian Gibson this evening? Bianca's deep voice interrupted. Yeah, thanks. Emmett sat up straighter. He'd forgotten they were doing that. Carter and Williams did well to get that security footage from the deli this morning. It will be interesting to hear his excuse for stealing cash from the family business. Oh no, not your double life theory again. Emmett ignored Bianca's smirk. At this stage, he wasn't prepared to discount anything. Cindy yawned as she stared out at the football field beyond, her little boy eagerly bouncing in his booster chair behind her. I can't wait to try a real game of footy, Nicholas squealed as more cars pulled up beside them. Can we get out yet? I think I see Mr. Peters. Hang on. Cindy looked around to see what the other parents were doing. They were at a different oval from where Nicholas usually trained, for a quick practice match against another club, and by some miracle they'd arrived early. Will Dad be here soon? I don't think Dad's going to make it, Cindy sighed, turning around and patting her little boy on the thigh. He's very busy at work at the moment, but he's asked me to take lots of videos so he can watch you when we get home. Nicholas frowned. But Jake's dad is coming, and William's dad is coming. I know, sweetheart, but your daddy has a very important job, and sometimes that means he can't always do fun things like other parents can. My dad's a policeman, Nicholas affirmed, proudly. That's right. Cindy returned to staring out the windscreen. If only I had a very important job. She gripped the steering wheel. Stop it. Emmett had been working ridiculously hard over the past few days, and she knew he desperately wanted to watch his son's first football match. He was the one who'd so eagerly signed Nicholas up in the first place, patiently explaining the rules when they watched games on TV together, and practicing skills at the park during the week. A nagging guilt gnawed at Cindy. News of the women's murders had been all over the radio that afternoon. She'd even heard a quick snippet of her husband talking to the press. "We are gravely concerned by the nature of these deaths and are urging anyone with information to come forward." It wasn't his fault that he was caught in such a high-profile case during her first week back at work. And how had she responded? She shook her head. It was only a kiss. "Mr. Peters is getting out." Nicholas kicked the back of her seat excitedly. "Can I go and help him set up?" "Okay." Cindy clambered out of the warm car, helping her son down and following as he dashed over to where his teacher had parked, a few spaces along. The football coach also happened to be Nicholas's school sports teacher, and Cindy knew from the glowing reports she'd received that Owen Peters was something of an idol for her little boy. "Hi there, Nicholas. Glad you made it." Cindy laughed as she watched the coach fist bump her son. "Do you think you can manage these?" Nicholas nodded eagerly, before carefully balancing a tower of orange cones at his chest and marching across the field. "Can I take that?" Cindy helped the coach lift a bag of footballs from the tray of his ute. "Thanks. Oh, I'm feeling my age today." "Oh, wait until you have kids. Then you'll really feel old." Cindy laughed, but she noticed the teacher's face drop. Perhaps that was a sore point? As a casual warm-up began, the sounds of leather footballs bouncing off goalposts, excited shouts, and the occasional cry of outrage rang out across the field. "Pass it to me! Pass it to me! Watch the ball, Evan! No, you've had your turn. Go to the back of the line." With the practice match about to start, Cindy pulled out her phone and considered the best vantage point from which to film her son. Out on the field, the two team captains were tossing a coin. She waited until she saw which direction Nicholas's team would be kicking, before inching her way around the oval's cold steel rail. "I hope they teach them to man up," a father said to no one in particular as the children took their places. "Why is Darcy in the back line?" Cindy cringed, silently watching the start of play until the parents' incessant commentary became too much, and she moved away. "Did you hear about Natalie? They found her body near the creek. I know, it's awful. Her poor children." Cindy's ears pricked up as she neared a group of women. Were they talking about Emmett's case? They must be. "I wonder how long it'll be before they arrest the husband." A pudgy woman with beady eyes and long acrylic nails snickered. "Who's Natalie?" another woman asked. "Dario's mother. You know, the Italian boy, the one who spat on Tremaine that time. He's a real..." The stout woman stopped, aware the conversation was being intruded upon. Cindy shuffled forward. "Sorry, I couldn't help overhearing what you were saying. Something about a body near a creek? It sounds terrible." The women glanced at each other, silently debating whether this newcomer could be trusted with their gossip. "It's all over the news. Haven't you heard?" a young woman in ripped jeans ventured. "Those two women who were murdered? One of them had a son who played at this club." "Here?" Cindy found herself stupidly craning her neck, as though the boy might be hiding nearby. "Yes, and the really scary thing is that the woman dropped her children at a holiday program that was held here just last week, and never returned. So that could have been any of us." "I hardly think so," the woman with acrylic nails scoffed. "Why do you say that?" Cindy asked. The women exchanged nervous looks. It'll come out soon enough anyway. A mother nursing a thermos shrugged. We all suspect the husband's done it. He was an absolute pig. He even got banned from the club for his constant outbursts. And you could tell Natalie wasn't happy. She told you that? No, the woman chuckled. But you could see by the way she behaved around other men that hers wasn't a happy marriage. You know what I mean? A quiet titter suggested the group were in agreement. But Cindy noticed that at least one mother looked decidedly uncomfortable. Do you mean she was having an affair? I don't know if it had gone that far, but she was certainly eager to cozy up to all of the fathers here, the coaches, even the umpires. You couldn't leave your husband alone when Natalie was around, that was for sure. The stout woman snorted with laughter. Several others chortled. Cindy smiled, but her chest tightened. How could they openly mock a woman who'd just been found dead? Did you ever meet her husband? She asked. But the question dissipated in the air as a sharp series of whistles indicated the short practice match was over. Thank goodness for that. The young woman in jeans immediately began manoeuvring out from the group. See you next week. In a matter of seconds, the women had dispersed, leaving Cindy standing on her own, watching guiltily as Nicholas bounded towards her. She'd barely seen a moment of the game, let alone filmed any of it. Did you see me take that big kick? Her son asked as they trudged back to the car. Yes, darling, she lied. You were great out there. I wish I had got a goal, though, Nicholas whispered as he allowed his mum to slip off his muddy boots before climbing up and into his booster seat. And they didn't even let us keep score. I know, but it doesn't matter. It was only a practice game. It was meant to be fun. Nicholas swung his bare feet. Are we at our home club on Saturday? Yes. This was just a one-off. That's good. I don't really like this club. Cindy pursed her lips. You know what? She gave her son a quick peck on the forehead as she clipped her seatbelt in. I don't think I do either. Inside the small room, Brian Gibson sat with his arms crossed defensively over his chest. I thought we were done with these meetings. Tell me why there was a bag stuffed with cash in your kitchen. Emmett didn't waste any time on pleasantries. Natalie's husband snorted. I'm entitled to keep my money wherever I want to. There's no law against that, is there? You were stealing money from the family business, and I highly doubt you were disclosing that income to the tax office. So yes, there is a law against that. Brian's lips tightened. My wife has been murdered, and you're worrying about my finances? Just tell me what was going on. Emmett slapped his hands on the edge of the table. It was late. He was in no mood for attitude. You were unhappy? Your marriage was in trouble? I loved Natalie. Brian's nostrils flared. Then sadness washed across his face. But she wasn't the same girl I met all those years ago. She'd changed. I probably had too. The relationship was over. You were planning on leaving? Yes. When? I don't know. I hadn't got that far. I was just trying to save as much as I could so I could disappear and start again. I was thinking I'd head up to Townsville or somewhere warm. I know that doesn't make me the greatest husband or father, but I wanted a clean slate. That's not a crime. Did you know your wife was pregnant? Bianca's gravelly voice was unusually soft. Yes. You knew? The unflinching response caught both detectives by surprise. Of course I knew. She was my bloody wife. And you didn't say anything? Emmett couldn't hide his disbelief. Brian shrugged. It was pretty obvious she didn't want the baby, and who was I to intervene? I was about to leave. Mr. Gibson, did you ever hurt your wife? Bianca's question hung heavy over the room. Brian fidgeted with his hands. No. Never? No. He slumped back in his chair. We argued a lot. I might have pushed her a bit once. I never hurt her, though. Not really. We've been told you were quite aggressive with Natalie. Had a bad temper. Let me guess who told you that. Brian sneered. Anyway, that doesn't make me a murderer. I never hurt her. I loved her. And yet you were planning on abandoning her. And the kids. Yes. Both detectives paused, the brutal honesty leaving them little to interrogate. Did you know your wife had returned to study? Emmett remembered Francesca's quivering lips as she'd recounted Natalie's promise to take care of her and Gino. What? Brian's pupils were wide. Yes, she was enrolled at the local TAFE, and was about to complete a certificate in aged care. For the first time, the man before them looked taken aback. Really? Why? How much was that costing us? You didn't know? No. So you have no idea about anyone she might have met through the course? Or who she might have been associating with there? Brian mutely shook his head. After several further unproductive questions, they let him go. Emmett staying behind in the interview room and watching from the window as his heavy frame slid into the mass of people heading home on a Thursday night. He was genuinely at a loss. He understood falling out of love with someone. But how could Brian have so casually planned to leave his two young children? Emmett frowned. It was heartless.